Good morning. It's July 16th. And this morning I want to talk about a phenomenon that is going on in this country. This country was founded on the principle of minority rights. And therefore, most of the states are independent entities. And the federal government has something like 17 delegated powers. And anything that falls under those delegated powers, the federal government can take care of. But if it doesn't, it becomes an issue for the states to take care of. And so one of the things we notice in the running of the federal government is that minority rules. Minority has the opportunity to challenge what the majority wants to do. Challenge usually comes in the form of a filibuster. For many years, the filibuster was a speech that was given on the floor of the Senate for long periods of time. In fact, the record for speaking is something like 30 hours or so. But they've done away with that. Now all the opposition needs to do is make a statement that says, we want a filibuster. And once that statement is issued, the Senate abandons the bill or whatever issue they were trying to pass and moves on to do other businesses. So in that way, the majority cannot get everything passed if there's a significant minority opposition. State government, only 13 states have a filibuster rule. 49 of the 50 states have a House and a Senate. Only Nebraska has a single chamber. Why do I bring this up? Because the situation in the states, in most of the states, is a straight majority rule situation. And therefore, when we're looking at voting rights, and in a majority rule situation, the majority can control how they want people to vote. And they can figure out ways to exclude voters who might vote for the minority party. And that's exactly what's going on in this country right now. And now I want to talk about Texas. Now, Texas has a filibuster rule, but for some reason, the minority representatives in the state of Texas decided that the filibuster rule probably wasn't going to work. So what did they do? Because they, the Democrats, are vehemently opposed to the voting right changes that the majority Republicans created for ongoing elections in the state of Texas. So all, or almost all, of the state legislators in Texas got on a private plane and flew to Washington, D.C. And in going to Washington, D.C., their purpose was to meet with representatives from other states, senators, congressmen, to see if in any way, shape, or form they could help all of the states that were being abused by their own state legislatures in passing these heinous voting rights laws, these new voting rights laws. So the Texas legislatures, by breaking quorum, have obviously delayed the vote on the new voting rights legislation. So Texas legislators are in Washington, D.C. to encourage the passage of the For the People's Act and the John Lewis Act, both of which will protect the voting rights of citizens of Texas and of many other states. So the governor, Greg Abbott, has issued a command that these people be arrested when they return to Texas. They can't go to D.C. and get them because that's out of state and they have no jurisdiction over there. But he also said on television that when they come back, he will manage to sequester them at the state capitol. And he will continue to order special sessions so that this bill can finally get passed. And he was vehement in his attack on these people for leaving. So I don't know how this thing is going to turn out. But he brought in the fact that there are many other bills that are affected by the fact that these legislators are missing in action. So is the governor saying that these other important bills won't be passed because the legislators are not in town? Why doesn't he change the sequence? Why doesn't he wait on his Voting Rights Act and let everything else get taken care of? And maybe they can negotiate a way out of this mess instead of threatening these state legislators with arrest. I mean, he has to look at this. This is a very unusual situation. We have not seen anything like this before in this country. What doesn't seem to understand is that these state legislators don't work for him. He is not their boss. He's the governor of the state, but he's not their boss. Their bosses are the Texans who voted for them, the Texas citizens that live in their districts. Those are the people that the representatives must account to. So this is the second time they walked out. And in my mind, that means their constituents gave them tacit approval to do it again. So these representatives, these Democratic representatives, are doing what the people in their district wanted them to do. So this bill, this voting rights bill, must be pretty bad in the eyes of the Democrats anyhow. We know in the eyes of the Republicans it's probably very good because they want to maintain the majority in that state forever. Abbott claims that there are more voting hours in this new law. But what good is voting hours if you can't get to the polls? If you don't have what they're looking for? If registration is difficult? You can have long voting hours. You can do a lot of things like that. But what if the citizens are not allowed to vote for one reason or another? Or if the polls are hundreds of miles away from where they live? So the fact that he's saying we have more voting hours doesn't mean that this is a good law. The only issue that Abbott seemed to be concerned about was the mail-in ballots. They were afraid that harvesting of the ballots and other methods of processing the mail-in ballots would lead to fraud. There was no fraud, though. They say if you have a problem with mail-in ballots, you can fix it. That would be easy enough. Concentrate on the one thing that's bothering you. Don't change everything else because you really, deep in your heart, don't want people voting. And that's what I have to say about this. And it's too bad that not more states have a filibuster. And it's too bad that not more state Democrats are taking action, visible action. So I leave you with those thoughts now, and I will see you in the morning. Bye. Bye.